All right, here we are on lunch break.
Live a lunch break.
Live on lunch break. You got you drinking water today? I got some sparkly
Water for lunch.
mm. Water and my famous dried mangoes.
Nice.
I went down and I scrambled and I got some almond butter and some mozzarella cheese.
What a combination.
It's like whatever is available to snack on right now.
Do you normally do you have like a proper meal after this, or is that just your dinner?
Uh, Meaning, yeah, I try to have something after this. Often we have something left over from the day before.
Hmm.
So yeah, from dinner the night before. So I'll have some leftovers, but I
Yeah,
try to not. I end up, I guess, not having too much because I want to have room for dinner. I guess a lot
yeah,
depends on like workout schedules too. Like if I'm gonna try to do a swim
yeah,
after lunch break, I probably should get some food in before the swim.
totally. Yeah.
So, um, so what? Yeah, how's Hawaii?
That's great. I still haven't
Any
been
new
surfing,
discoveries?
but
No surfing yet?
no surfing yet. Surf lesson to be scheduled, but we've been going on like little hikes around, which has been nice. The goal is run up a hill, watch sunset, and swim in the ocean at least once every day, which is
Nice.
very doable here because everything is like in the same 5 minute
Hmm.
radius usually. So that's
Right.
been good.
And I thought I saw you tweeting yesterday with Viti. Is he in Hawaii
He's
now?
here. Yeah, I haven't seen him yet, but he's literally like 15 minutes away from where I am.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, so we might hang out later today actually.
Oh,
Oh, here's
awesome.
Amy.
Oh yeah, she's looks like she's maybe on mobile or Safari. Um, that's cool. And so did he was in New York, right? And did he just arrive recently on the
Yeah, we
island?
both actually arrived on the same day.
Oh
Like
wow.
I had been talking about coming here and then I saw his tweet like who wants to move to Hawaii or something and then I messaged him like actually who either are in or are about to be on the island.
Right. Um, wow. And so what else happened? There was some other Hawaii tweeting yesterday. Do you want to dissect any of what was happening there? But there was like a
What else?
movement. Oops.
Oh yeah. There was
And
tweeting and
like
subtweeting going on.
there's subtweeting and then retweeting.
There's just a lot going on in that Twitter thread.
It was it was a busy day.
Yeah.
And sad news. I saw. Sorry to make it dark all of a sudden, but did you see Christopher Plummer died today?
I didn't, but I don't even know who he is. Who is that?
He's the guy. Have you seen The Sound of Music?
I haven't, no.
You've never seen The Sound of Music?
I know, it's a shame. I need to
Wow.
really get
Okay.
on that.
Did you happen to see Knives Out?
Mm-mm. Was he
Okay.
involved with that as well?
Yeah. Yeah. He was. I think he was
Wow.
like the kind of patriarch of the family. So he was Captain Von Trapp um, in Sound of Music, which was like kind of a classic, uh, classic movie and classic musical.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, it's one that Jen and I would go see every year. That at the Castro Theater, they host a Sound of Music Castro sing along,
Wow.
and they have like the karaoke words up on the bottom of the screen, and you can kind of watch along and
That's so nice.
sing along, and yeah, it's fun.
I think I know a
So
bunch
this
of the
year,
songs, but somehow I've just never seen the actual Sound of Music. But
oh yeah,
maybe I will now.
yeah. All right, so I noticed we have a guest. We're going to bring Amy up into the video stream now. Hey, Amy. Oh, I
Hey,
think
looks like you're
I
on
think we
mute.
got you muted.
Sorry, it's been taking me a second to really figure out the technology here. I got hit with the sign up and then the setup, and now I figured it out. So this is great. Cool.
Right. Thanks for being patient with us. Yeah. We're kind of still polishing some of the edges and details. So hopefully it's not too frustrating to to get connected here.
No, not at all. It was easy. I should have just budgeted more time for it. It's like joining your first Zoom call.
Yeah.
So some of the context here, because I don't think we've talked before much about Highlighter, or at least not recently. Mm-hmm. So Highlighter, on Highlighter, we organize these kind of live stream TV shows, and the main one that we run is this this Lunchbreak that Mishti and I do. And most of what Lunchbreak is we're just like reading Twitter and reading interesting articles and sharing them with each other. But then sometimes sometimes somebody comes by who is interested in jamming on some idea from Twitter or some other idea, and so we also open up to that. And so when we were trading texts earlier today, and you were talking about travel stuff, I thought maybe that'd be a fun one to do in this format. But I just wanted to let you know it's super low stakes. We're not, we are recorded and live, but we're not sharing it out to anybody. Wow. So if somebody shows up, they may see it, but otherwise we'll just have fun. And Mishti and I love jamming on startup ideas anyway, so hopefully we can have fun and do that. And if there's other stuff you want to cover kind of more offline or one-on-one, we can also do that separately.
Yeah, sounds good. And Mishti, just to catch you up on what brought this about is guys, I've been at my job for 6 years now, and I've been finally thinking about taking a break and doing something I've always dreamed of doing, which is going and travel the world for 6 months, just go hit up a bunch of places. But the thing I find is that I think my needs as a traveler aren't well served by the incumbent travel services that are out there. And I also find that they've kind of been the same for about the last decade. And I know there's a good reason for that, right? It's a really tough space to innovate in or for people to enter, but it's kind of the same old TripAdvisor, use the same old booking services. And so I'm finding more and more that I enjoy discovering travel destinations more so through my friends' Instagram stories or even Instagram in general now than the traditional app that was sort of built for travel. And so I think what sort of brought this about is what are some ways that we could innovate to sort of bring travel into the new age, with things being facilitated more through content creators, for example, or just being very hyper localized and experience focused. That isn't sort of being served by the right now.
Yep. Yeah. I love this space. I totally agree that I think there's just a ton of stuff that's it feels like an old space that hasn't had a lot of evolution from since TripAdvisor days. There's Booking.com. Maybe the most modern new approach to travel might be Airbnb, but that's itself 10 years old and kind of focused on a specific kind of niche use. I mean, not to say niche, but it's focused on a very specific use case. So I think it's an area that I think is exciting and ripe for new ideas and fresh approaches. And especially one thing I like about it a lot is that the pandemic has made a dramatic shift and reset in people's expectations and what it means to travel. Maybe before, in previous years, we would have gone to an international location, and this year we took a road trip. And so it's, I think there's a lot of those habits that are being transformed and kind of getting reset right now. And so I think, kind of now and coming out of pandemic in the next, hopefully months or years, there's going to be new habits established and people are going to be ready for doing things in new ways. So I think it's overall pretty exciting space to be addressing. I could share just a few, kind of riffing on some of the concepts that you raised, and I could sort of share some things that kind of have been on my mind related with it, if that's helpful. Or if you want to go deeper on something that you already had in mind, we could do that. So I don't know. And actually, Mishti wanted to clarify. So sometimes when we're doing these shows, we're kind of public and live, but we didn't invite a lot of people. But sometimes if like a great moment in our conversation happens, we'll actually create a highlight and share it out. So we wanted to just check, is that okay, or you'd rather we
Totally
don't
fine.
share those? Or?
Totally
Okay.
fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sometimes we just tweet out like, oh, we're talking about like this really interesting thing if anyone wants to join, and then someone will pop in with a cool idea or something. So if anything comes up, I can do that, but just wanted to check first.
Cool.
That's great. I'm totally comfortable with that. And David, feel free to jump into some of the ideas that you already have. Eric sort of referred me to you as an expert in the space and somebody who's a lot about it. And so I'm really curious. And I'm more speaking from a consumer standpoint where I'm like, why isn't there something better? You know, so
right.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't call myself an expert in the travel space, but I'm happy to share whatever ideas I've been noodling on for a while. So, you know, I think like a lot of like the, you know, call it the internet 1.0, web 1.0 experiences around like TripAdvisor and stuff it sort of came about in an earlier structure of the internet. And I don't think they're necessarily as relevant to the way the internet is moving or kind of the web is being restructured. And I think a lot of times when thinking about, you know, discovery oriented services, I first want to like rewind to like a new creator format or behavior in creation. And I think to do discovery well, I think you first need to sort of enable creation, because otherwise kind of the aggregation approach or kind of like better AI or something always feels thin compared to like if you can find a real opportunity to enable people with new tools to create in a new way and to connect in a new way. So that's one thing, is I'd be like on the lookout for like, you know, you mentioned like Instagram. Well, are there like creation units that curate a bunch of different Instagram, like, you know, accounts or photos or images that could help showcase what a place is like? And I think that feels to me like something that already happens, but is pretty broken. So like, you know, before when we were open to international travel, my wife would be like scrolling through Instagram. That's where she kind of does like travel shopping, right? And that's sort of, oh, I'm curious about this place. But she doesn't have, you know, like Instagram inspires, but it doesn't necessarily connect the dots in a meaningful way. And so you can imagine like being able to have a place where those, you know, the inspiration may happen initially on Instagram, but then when you want to connect the dots and get deeper, you go somewhere else where it's kind of curated and organized in a useful way. And so, you know, I like we, you know, she'll find like, oh, this beach looks great, and then this mountain looks great, and I'm like, okay, those are all in the same country, but you know, each one's 12 hours, you know, away, you know, by rail or whatever, you know. And so you want to actually figure out how do you find sets of activities or itineraries to do around those things that inspired you in the first place. So one kind of category or area that I've been excited about is sort of creating tools to enable curation of itineraries, because it has like the creative, you know, it's a underserved from a kind of tooling perspective, and it becomes a creative or curatorial moment that lets people assemble all kinds of great, like there's video and photo content and people written up personal itineraries, and you can almost create that into a unit of like, here's what it's like to, I don't know, visit Colombia or something, or here's the best cycling trip through Colombia. And you can kind of, you know, let people pick all of their best photos or best photos that inspired them to take the trip, or their own personal photos, but you end up making these like almost like a collage or almost like an inspiration board of what that was like. And then I think you've got like the best thing on the internet. Like if you want to go on a cycling trip to Colombia, here's the link, you know?
Yeah, that's very interesting. It's almost like, yeah, if you can give them, we see these sort of 2 or 3 day itineraries on TripAdvisors. People can post kind of their own itineraries, but it's lacking a lot of like elements that somebody could add to it if they had the tooling, right? Like how can I just very easily attach a photo to this destination so that while you're reading about it, you can see it? Can the destinations automatically connect in terms of like, how do I get from point A to point B? Do you recommend a bus or a train? And so if you could provide some tools where it's a template and somebody could more easily sort of drag and drop and suggest a series of actions, like that would be very interesting indeed. Like then you could sort of follow someone's itinerary or take it from them and kind of almost use the self-guided app to get yourself from place to place. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like those ideas, and I think one of the big benefits to to the world to have such a thing is, you may have gone on dozens or hundreds of trips in life, but you don't probably have an audience assembled that is appropriate to all of those trips. Meaning, like, maybe on Twitter you have people who are curious about you and your ideas, but there's probably people who would be interested in understanding more about your trip who don't follow you on Twitter, for example. So the audience assembly around people who want to visit Myanmar, like, how do you find that hub of content? And today it kind of just lives little bits and pieces, TripAdvisor or whatever. But if you wanted to actually here's all of the people, and here's all of the itineraries they took, and here's all the visual inspiration boards that they created pre and post trip. I think those kinds of, I've almost termed it, I don't always love the like X for Y analogies, but almost like medium for travel photography. Because you can go to like a hub, like a publication, which is about, a destination, and different people who have experience with that destination could, create the content, even if they're relying on the platform to help find the audience that cares about that particular destination because they don't have that destination in mind themselves.
Yeah, and you could have locals even just create great content for travelers.
Yeah.
A lot of, we went to Hawaii recently and did a drive, and somebody had created an app specific to that drive where as you're driving through the destinations, the narration automatically triggers. And it's all these.
This Road to Hana?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's only a local could have created something like that, right? And I could create something about San Francisco that would just be way more valuable than like somebody who was here for a week. But somebody who was here for a week could, in retrospect, document the places that they were at and publish that out and say, hey, this is what I did, and it was pretty cool. But how do you think about discovery, right? If you've got a lot of creators all creating content about, say, San Francisco, how should someone who comes on sort of sort and filter and figure out which one's for them?
I would guess that a lot of it is around the time of creation. Like, I think to bootstrap a new network like this, I think you really want to just get like deep on the creator tool and don't worry so much about people coming to like the front page and trying to figure out what to do, but figure out how to make like a creator tool that's great. And then if you enable a new type of creation, like you create these like inspiration boards and itineraries, people will share those things out. Those units will go out to their friend networks. They'll go out to their Twitter audiences and stuff. And people will learn about, there's like actually a new way to express my travel knowledge. And I think that can draw people in then to create and again share out. So I would think about those types of kind of creation and sharing processes as really core. And I wouldn't worry so much about like on-site discovery to start with. Just worry about building a creation tool and unit that people find really valuable. And I mean, they're hard. It's not like these things, just show up every day. So, but if you can find one that's valuable, then I think that thing helps you share it with people. People discover that and say, I know something about another place. Let me add that. And then you can kind of create this kind of corpus of human knowledge around, travel destinations. And the discovery piece, I think, comes, once you have, thousands or hundreds of these things, you can actually have an on-site discovery mechanism, or maybe you can actually just see a map of the world and see all the different destinations, or you see which ones were added in the last 24 hours. So I think there's ways to solve discovery if you have a lot of content, but if you don't have a lot of content, I think discovery isn't super meaningful.
So by sharing, you mean like sharing it to my Twitter followers or sharing it to the Instagram followers that you have, and how sort of link into it.
And you could imagine, I bet there are people who do this on Instagram already today, but Instagram's not like it's not like, it doesn't have like a canonical place to find stuff about Road to Hana, right? So maybe there's a travel influencer who has taken the best trip and they've got all the best recommendations and stuff, but like it lives on like an Instagram post, but is hard for people to find other than through like searching hashtags or something. But you can't just like find all the stuff, and you can't compose the story in quite the way you might want to. Like, here's a link to the the car rental place we used, or to the tour operator that we thought was great. Those kinds of things don't really work on Instagram. So I think if you wanted to believe those new unit, it'd have to be because you believe like some composition of images, photos pulled from the web, drag and drop this, links to the operators. Like, if that whole thing provided something that like people thought was really useful and interesting and they were proud of, they would start sharing those things out as a unit of like a composed unit of like, it's not just here's a beautiful picture, but here's the itinerary for how you do this. And then other people could think about their knowledge. Actually, it might even be useful to think about it as a place that people would pick. Like, some people would create itineraries, but then some people would go to the created itineraries and sort of select pieces from those to create their customization of that itinerary. And if that model works, and I think they're kind of like, they're different hypotheses. It may be that one works and the other doesn't, or maybe neither of them work, or maybe both work, I don't know. But if one of those worked, you actually might be able to say, okay, we're going to invest in content creators. We're going to actually find people to build great core itinerary creation. And then we're going to just have the creation tool that's more open to everybody is really like an itinerary curation tool. So I don't have to start by pulling in all the Instagram stuff. I just have to start by saying, I want to go road to Hana. And then I can see somebody who professionally curated, like, here's all the dozens of things you could do. And now you can just say, put that one on mine, put that one on mine, put that one on mine. And so then it becomes like less work. Then you're just like, I go here because they have all the best stuff. And then I sub-curate into like what I want to do. And then I probably maybe later I attach my photos to it, or like it helps me bootstrap my own version of that story.
It sounds like you're a planner, and Mishti, I'm curious if you're that way as well. I think I tend to be.
I was actually going to say, I don't know if I would ever use an itinerary creation thing. So this is what I travel a lot, and I love traveling. I'm actually in Hawaii right now, and I was living in Colorado before that. Just been nomadic for a couple of years. But I feel like what I do is something more akin to what you were saying at the start. I actually often use Google Maps. You can create your own map. So then I'll just pin a bunch of places. And my friends have done this too for me. So when I went to Berlin for the first time, a friend who'd spent a lot of time there just shared me his map of places. And to me, that was actually the most useful thing, because then I could figure out my own transport and housing and stuff. That's often I feel too personalized to do well for people, unless it's a very much more tour group type situation, or maybe older family travelers who need very rigid kind of just tell me where my meals are and where my car connections are and stuff. But I feel for younger, sort of more flexible travelers like me, it's just more useful to get a list of really cool places and experiences and then figure it out from there myself. So what I end up using are these more collaborative maps with friends, or going on Instagram and looking up a place and looking at top posts, whichever hikes look the most beautiful, I'll then add them to my trip. Or I'll go on all trails and browse a bunch of hikes. But yeah, all of these things are in different places. And for me, the way it centralizes are those maps that then my friends and I share. But I don't know how you experience this. I'm just trying to think out loud about how I end up doing this and how it would be useful and easier to do in the future with some sort of tool.
I've done it very similarly, where a friend would share out a map of places that they've been to when they were on a trip, and then I just sort of follow those recommendations. And it's surprising to me that Google Maps has actually become a very commonly used travel tool.
Yeah.
It's specifically built for that, but they created one little functionality, which is you can drop a pin someplace, save it, and then deliver it to somebody else, and all of a sudden it has all this pretty widespread utility. Do you find that that functionality is good enough for you, or is there anything that's sort of lacking because the tool wasn't predominantly built for that use case, for example?
Yeah, I think some sort of So what might be cool is if you could open up a map and then I'm trying to think of how you would bootstrap this though, because without, like DK was saying, without enough content, I'm not sure, but maybe like the ideal end state would be I can open up a map of Hawaii, maybe like choose my kind of profile of person. Like a lot of travel recommendations I just don't care for because I don't want anything too touristy. Like I have like my own special, I just want to
Yeah.
be outdoors all the time. Like my own kind of quirks that aren't really well served by just looking at like TripAdvisor's top 5 things.
Right.
So, but then that reminds me a little bit more of like Atlas Obscura type stuff. Like, I don't know if they have kind of community generated map type things for locations, but that could be something that would be interesting and useful.
Say more about Atlas Obscura. What is that like?
I just shared a link in chat, by the way, for Atlas.
Yeah, I haven't used it extensively, but I've found a couple times these kind of off the beaten path type places that
Oh,
would come up in like community resourcing as opposed to like a formal guide. Sometimes live here.
oh, that's cool. I gotta check this out.
But I don't know if they're more of just like a content machine where they hire a bunch of people to churn this out versus is it like community generated?
Hmm.
But yeah, that came to mind. And then also this like Get Your Guide company I'd heard of last year, which I think is more oriented towards like formal tour guides and like tours through places. But it seems like they've been raising interesting funding and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there are sort of different services built around like communities of different types of travelers.
Yeah.
So you've got your like Atlas Obscura population, you've got your sort of plan and itinerary population, you've got
Yeah.
people who like the touristy stuff and will use TripAdvisor. I wonder if there is a way to bring that all together, or if it really just needs to be sort of niche serving of different customer segments. Shoot, it's 12:30. I'm so sad to go because I
Yeah.
enjoyed this discussion.
Well, this is fun, yeah.
Alas, the workday calls. But it was great meeting you both, and I hope to
Yeah.
pick your brains again in the future about any obscure topic. But thanks for introducing.
Yeah, let's keep jamming on it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thanks for
definitely.
joining me.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about what you're thinking and stuff. So you should come by Lunchbreak again any other time.
For sure. I'm going to let these thoughts sink in a little bit more, but it's been a super interesting discussion. Have a good one.
Cool.
See ya.
Thanks,
Bye.
Emma. See ya. All right. There we go.
And that went
Yeah.
by fast.
It did. Wow.
Yeah.
I know. Get Your Guide a little bit. I had a friend who worked there, and I think they sort of are pretty kind of commerce focused. So they're like helping connect tour guides with audience or tourists.
Yeah.
So I guess I started going in the content community direction versus the commerce, but I think they're sort of both potentially interesting cuts on that problem.
It's
my
tricky
understanding
though because it seems difficult to convince a travel enthusiast to put their insights on a new platform where like most people just post on Instagram or do this kind of Google Map sharing type thing. So what kind of social credit or basically like what's in it for them besides producing nice kind of scrapbook type material for themselves that they can trade around in terms of the curation of place and itinerary?
Yeah, I mean, I would, I think, if you wanted to try to understand this well, I would probably want to try to talk to people who are kind of doing this on Instagram, similar to the pet, only pets discussion.
Negative 50 again.
I'm going to look at it right now. So if I go to Instagram, oh shoot, I have to be logged in, I guess. Let's see if I can do that quickly.
Do you mean like prolific travel bloggers, or do you mean like what kind of person would you be looking for?
So I would bet there are people who are kind of doing this on Instagram today to some extent, and just that they do you know the link tree phenomenon? on
No.
Instagram? So, you know, like Instagram, basically, like nothing can be linked from like a post.
Yeah.
So everybody says link in bio, and that's the single place where people can link things.
Yeah.
So Linktree is basically like the link in bio redirector. So if you're, you know, if you're like an influencer in a category on Instagram, then you actually have your Instagram you set up. You, whenever you're talking about your stuff, you always say link in bio. Link in bio points to Linktree, and then Linktree is a service that you can use to like shuttle that traffic and attention into different places depending on what, you know, what kinds of promotion or commerce stuff you're doing. But you can imagine being the link tree for travel influencers and building tools that help travel influencers share more, monetize more, explain more about like what they're doing. So, you know, if if people are already travel influencers, they have link in bio, but then where do you show up? Like, how do you actually say, oh, this is this is the tour operator that I would recommend you book with, and I, you know, presumably as an influencer should have some economics in that referral or something. So I think there's stuff like that that probably, you know, could serve the needs. I mean, it seems to me that that kind of thing could serve the needs of an existing travel influencer. But again, this is like highly unresearched and just kind of off the cuff riffing.
Interesting. Yeah, because you have like Instagram workout or like fitness influencers who end up starting their own brands and like empires. Basically, they sell like food supplements and workout plans and whatnot. So kind of a similar thing for the travel ones. I wonder if, yeah, surely they must be doing this. I don't know what if they just end up investing in building like custom websites and stuff to send people to.
Yeah. So I mean, Linktree, I'm not super in the details on this one, but I've heard, I see it all over the place, and I think it's, so this is called the only link you'll ever need. Connect audiences to all of your content with just one link. And so basically this is link in bio. You click on that and you get kind of a custom page where from that page people can, you know, click on one of several different other destination websites. It's almost like the routing website, and you can click on, oh, try my line of skincare. Oh, buy my hoodies. You know, oh, you know, download or follow me on Spotify or whatever. So I think this is kind of like the sets of call to actions, but it's made in like a fairly, let's call it like a, you know, a generalized commerce solution. Whereas maybe if you're specific to travel influencer, you would want a link tree that, you know, drops you on, here's the 5 places I've talked about or visited recently, and you can click on any one of them and get the map plus my photos plus links to the tour operators that I recommend, or like the hotel I stayed at, or, you know, something where you're sort of using that redirection surface to try to, you know, kind of manage your, I don't know, influencer business a little bit better. Again, I'm not really a travel influencer, so I'm just hypothesizing around mechanics that I've seen. But you know, I think, you know, maybe step one is go talk to some of these people and see if the current tools serve them, or if they know that they're underserved. If you could propose some solutions about how they might be underserved.
Yeah.
And if so, maybe there's opportunity to build something that serves people who already have like assembled audience and are just like missing some tooling in the space.
Yeah, I feel like something like this, I just looked up top travel Instagrams and it linked to this person's website, but I feel like this is a very typical travel influencer makes a website type situation where they just like put a bunch of blog content. I'm sure they have a good email list and can monetize off that and do like promos with different companies and basically end up becoming, that's how they support themselves.
Perfect example. And I'm looking at this like map, so there's like Iceland, Canada, Spain, Finland, Australia. So this young adventurous has been to New Zealand road trip part 1, part 2. So I would bet that people like this can, you know, I think people exist like this who do, you know, some mix of like professional full-time, side hustle, kind of following their passion. So that kind of thing, I think there's already appetite for that, and there's energy put into that, but probably like I would guess that the tooling is underserved. So maybe like just talk to dozens of people who are kind of already doing this, but sort of need better tooling, and really see what they need or what could help.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look up. So I'm on Road to Hana right now. Top posts.
What is
I'm
that?
trying to see if Road to Hana is that was the ride or the drive that Amy was talking about. So here's a link to the Road to Hana hashtag. This is kind of a famous narrated. It's got like 23 stops. It connects Paia to Hana, and there's like the 7 sacred pools, and there's all these like waterfall stops and little country stands where you can get rice plates and stuff. And
Yeah. But what was the narrated thing? It was like a separate service or separate website someone made?
I think there was a mobile app that she was using that while you drive the Road to Hana, you actually get the narration of because the Road to Hana has typically 23 points of interest or something.
Okay.
So I think somebody just here's roadtohana.com sites. There's Paia Town, Huaqipa Lookout, Twin Falls, Waikamoi, Ridge Trail. So each of these is just like one of the things to do while you drive, little stop off points. And I think she was talking about a mobile app she had that, kind of narrated all these points based on which GPS coordinate you were at.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
But this young adventurer, so let's start with that one. And can we go to her? Okay, so follow me on Instagram. So let's see what her Instagram looks like. So Instagram, she has 201,000 followers on Instagram. So she seems like she's, really in this. And let's see if we click on her thing. Does she have? She just sends everybody to her blog, youngadventurous.com. So this blog is where she kind of, I guess let's see what she's got. Destinations, moving abroad, what moving to New Zealand at 13 taught me about life. And then she has like a bunch of.
Yeah, like most of them just monetize by making, I think, like partnerships with brands, but also sounds like just their YouTube channels or email lists and stuff.
Right. So these things, I guess it would seem that people should be able to build these audiences like faster or get benefit from collabs with other people. Think about like the whole collab culture and why it works for people who are creators is that it cross-pollinates audiences well.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe Young Adventurous has a dozen destinations that she talks about on her website, but certainly that doesn't cover everything. So then if you wanted to learn about other people who are sort of her travel ethos, but that have been to another dozen places that she hasn't been to, like she hasn't been to South America or Africa at all, or even like Asia, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
So you could imagine that somebody has similar, travel aesthetic and ethos and style that she does, but that would be a good collab partner. But how does she find that person, and how do they collab? Like, how do they cross-pollinate audiences so that her audience gets exposure to others and other audiences get exposure to her?
Yeah.
And, I mean, certainly some of this happens through Instagram today. So I wouldn't discount that, but I don't know. I don't do a lot of like I think maybe I came off as too itinerary planning about it. I actually don't do a lot of that. But I like to draft on other people's plans. So like I have this friend who, yeah, I think like 10 years ago, or he's been going to Bali for, I don't know, 12 or 15 years. And every time he goes, he writes more content and has more recommendations and has all kinds of detail.
Yeah.
And so I think I went to Bali 10 years ago or something, um, and you know, he just drafted off of everything he learned. Everything in his doc was kind of the right thing that I would want to know about.
Yeah.
But it was all in a Google Doc. It wasn't, you know, it's not available anywhere on the internet. And he probably doesn't want to do that with it because he's not trying to like be an influencer or monetize it. He's just like sharing with friends. But he was the meticulous one about itineraries, and I was just like, oh, I'm going to pick that, or let's do that next week, or you know. I like to draft off of other people's knowledge there versus create it myself.
That's why I'm kind of like the serving travel influencers thing is a totally different route that I know nothing about. But if it's to be more of a like normal person use case within someone's social circles, I'm like the most useful thing is really like platforms like Twitter or Instagram or Facebook that have a bunch of your friends assembled, and then like literally I'll look up on Facebook my friends who live in Shanghai, and then it'll say who lives there. I've done this before, and then I'm like, oh, you moved to Shanghai? I didn't know that. Like I haven't talked to you in 6 years. Facebook tells me you're there, and I'm going there next month. So, and then that's what ends up like helping me have a good travel experience. So I don't know if I would do that on a wholly separate platform.
Right. Yeah, I'm not certain exactly what. Yeah, I would say I probably am not close enough to the use case to really get it, but it does seem like there's you know, interesting stuff to do here that you could maybe help create new structures. So it doesn't feel like a dead end to me, is my point. So if there's ways to like begin that exploration and see if you can build conviction around what that would look like or should look like these days.
Yeah. What else has been interesting? Should we
travel
we haven't done like a proper like we're going on Twitter and scrolling through.
Back to Twitter? Yeah, it's been too long. I guess I shared my Christopher Plummer from Twitter, but that was too much of a downer, I guess. Let's see. I think there's I like this tweet I just saw. So do you know this calendar that Shrug Capital puts together? So Shrug Capital is this guy, Neve, I think is his name. Let me look it up. Neve Drawer, yeah. So Shrug.vc. So they do all kinds of cool swag. And one of the things they do is they take, like, I don't know, all their favorite tweets for the year, and then they make the Shrug calendar, and each day has a different tweet on it.
Oh, wow.
So today's tweet is from Jeff Morris Jr. And he said, underrated. You only have to be right about one thing in your career to be smart in Silicon Valley. So examples are pick the right startup to join, invest in the right company, become obsessed with the right sector before everyone else, or before everyone. Many smart people have only been right about one thing. That's the February 5th, Shrug Capital Calendar, Q1 21. And I think there's like some real truth to that. And I like how Semel retweeted it, or kind of tweeted a photo to it, and he's one shot, which I take it as a, you know, Lin-Manuel Miranda reference.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Oh, Max looked over the calendar for edits. Was that were you doing that as part of the editorial process, pre-production, or was that just some sort of obsession that you decided to see if you could learn more about? Yeah, I think the calendar's good.
yeah,
well curated.
here's an interesting one.
One of my recurring talking points to anybody who's willing to listen. Any small group of people loosely but truly aligned on something can create powerful vectors by producing public-facing work that's directed at each other. Talking about the creation of scenes, basically.
Yeah, so like you don't need to necessarily assemble a huge audience to start creating good content.
Mm-hmm.
You could start with a couple people to jam with. Like I think it's difficult to do totally solo. People have done that, but whether it's a blog or like a podcast or I mean kind of what we're doing right now, like just have
Right.
someone else there, talk about something of similar interest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me of, I mean, the scenes idea feels like an idea, or at least terminology maybe borrowed from music, because you see, these scenes of musicians, like I think, like, was it the Beatles in Hamburg? That was like a scene in Hamburg, and they kind of grew up in that scene. And I think there were probably some others who were part of that scene, but effectively, like by creators or practitioners or craftspeople within a scene gathering and doing their craft together, it probably lowers the kind of transaction costs or friction for audience to also assemble, because like instead of just going to see the Beatles who nobody had ever heard of, you just know that if you're in Hamburg, there's good music always available, and so people who care about good music might be attracted to Hamburg or something like that. But I think there's, like, in a sense, supply side benefits and demand side benefits when you create a little bit of a scene. So at least, so in the offline world, obviously these scenes are fairly location dependent. The online world, they obviously should be fairly location independent.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious though, if he's saying, I beat this drum periodically to find the others. Sad thing is that there aren't actually very many others.
Like others, people who want to co-create with him, I think he means. You think that's what he means?
It could be. I mean, I don't know. Most of his writing seems pretty open to the possibilities. So I'm curious why this one seems.
This thread is kind of interesting.
Pessimistic.
Okay,
yeah.
so this is kind of like a longer thread. Oh, okay. So the original tweet was from 2019, and then he's continued on it. A lot of scenes falter because the alignment is not sufficiently true. Music and literature scenes are full of people who care neither about music nor literature. What's a minimum viable scene? Have two sufficiently obsessive people who are trying to impress and outdo each other in public. But usually it takes a broader, wider scene. In reality, scenes seem to need 24 people.
Is that 24 as the practitioners?
Practitioners meaning?
Meaning the kind of the creators in a scene versus audience in a scene?
I think he means both, and that'll like push the creators to the top, maybe.
Why do you think music and literature might be scenes that are full of people who care about neither music, I guess, nor literature? Music and literature scenes are full of people who care about neither music.
Thing to be like a hipster who likes literature, but maybe he's saying like a lot of it ends up becoming like a superficial social label that people take on.
So I don't know much about this phenomenon, but I know it's recently a little bit more in the news with all the Miami talk. But do you know much about Art Basel?
A little bit, yeah.
What exactly is that? A scene? What is that?
I don't know if I would. Well, I don't know how much of a community it is beyond the people like coming together and leaving around the event. So I don't know if he means more like collectives of like more consistent collectives of people?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, so the most recent two tweets in this were he retweeted this into the thread, which we could read. That could be interesting. And this.
This is when I click on that, I think I got the, maybe I'm in the wrong, I need to be in my logged in browser. Let me see. This is the recurring talking points. Is that the one you're mentioning? Because that shows 2019.
The last two that I just posted.
Okay. So now, let's see if I can, I need to get my, yeah, I think Twitter renders these things funny. I've had this problem before, but when I click on the link that you shared there, I end up with this July 23rd, 2019 one, but I think that's not the one you're talking about, right?
Oh, weird. I guess, is it not the top one from Packy that I sent? You're not seeing?
I think that'll give me a different one. I was doing the second to last, the Packy one. I'm thrilled to publish the essay I wrote for David Perl's Rite of Passage. That one.
Yeah.
Conjuring Senius, or It's Time to Build Together. Cool. Yeah, I haven't read that. Have you read this yet?
Mm-mm.
Cool. Should we?
It looks like it's old. So he posted this in May 2020, but Visa just retweeted it, and then there was this other guy who posted a follow-up, which is this. We could read his tweet storm summary of it.
This is Patel Ophone, that one. Baumik. People want to belong to a community and have status within it. Learning communities empower that. Oh, this is cool. I haven't heard of this guy. He's in the Substack scene, I guess.
Maybe, I haven't heard of him either. A history of learning communities.
Are you at London's coffee houses to Bell Labs? That post?
Yeah, I'm just reading the thread because it sounds like he just summarized it there.
Okay.
Okay, basically how like coffee houses and places where people started meeting each other were game changers for exchanging ideas. That makes sense.
I like this. John Dewey was another pioneer in the social and experiential approach towards learning. Education stifles autonomy when learners are taught that knowledge flows in one direction, from the expert to the learner. His thinking was met with stiff bureaucratic resistance. How different would education be if public schools were built around Dewey's philosophy?
Mm-hmm.
Which is cool because, despite the fact that these are not solved problems yet, I think the internet, the fundamentals should be able to solve this in new ways. I don't think we've quite seen what that looks like yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, this is kind of cool. So this and Packy, I think like the overall statement is when you get good people together, give them some incentive to share their creative and best ideas because it'll elevate their status in a community they care about. Like a lot of progress can happen there. So then this is like the Packy quote. The discoveries that came to elevate standards of living for everyone arose in comparably tiny geographic pockets. Which is like...
That's from Packy's tweet storm?
Yeah, like Silicon Valley, Bell Labs,
right.
Motown, the Renaissance in Florence. Now, because of COVID, we have the opportunity to create the next generation of world-changing scenes amplified by the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, these are, I like this actually.
There's I noticed his May 18th tweet. He talks about how are modern budding senior applying history's ingredients to build generative, influential communities. I spoke to the leaders of two of the most promising communities, David Perel of Rite of Passage and the Anagat of What is the II, which is the interintellect. So much to learn watching them. I feel like I'm familiar with each of their work a little bit, but not super deep on them, but they each do seem like they're kind of cultivating community of kind of peer-to-peer. Like it is a lot more peer-to-peer than kind of, lecture oriented. And Anna's running those like salons, right?
Yeah. I'm curious what he would say now, because he published this essay in May 2020, and he was sort of saying that like a lot of these scenes emerge from situations of catastrophe, and COVID is our crisis. But have they? Like, I wonder how you
meaning is he? Yeah. Are these is he like kind of backfitting this just because we happen to be in a catastrophe right now?
I don't know. Well, this was like a couple months into COVID, I guess. Yeah. Can Scenius occur exclusively online? We're not there yet. The best will be a hybrid of online and offline.
I mean, how is Scenius not, the sea shanties in TikTok? I mean, isn't that Scenius emerging? Or is there's not enough?
Well, so here are the 4 factors on the side. Do you think they all apply?
So we're looking. So this is the 2008 Kevin Kelly piece. So mutual appreciation, check. Rapid exchange of tools and techniques, check. Network effects of success. I think somewhat. I think people build audiences on TikTok that create network effects for the sets of creators who are involved with it. Local tolerance for the novelties, check. Yeah.
What does that mean?
I mean, I think it means that like you can play music late into the night in Hamburg in that era.
On the sea shanties and make a completely random thing, and you're not going to be like
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. In the TikTok sea shanty case, local tolerance for the novelties. I think it's probably hard to imagine like an online platform that doesn't have local tolerance for novelties. Unless as long as they're kind of not obviously illegal. I think there's probably local tolerance for novelties in online communities. I think the weakest one of the 4 from Kevin Kelly may be network effects of success, because I don't know. I think if people participate...
Here's the original article. So he's saying, when someone from within the scene has like a breakthrough, the entire scene benefits.
Oh, I was saying it wrong. It's Scenius is like genius. It's a portmanteau of scene and genius. Okay.
So that's why I feel like the sea shanty thing is not like a scene. Like the scene, the scene of it might be like the TikTok creators behind the sea shanties who are then like motivated to make the new meme that'll come after that or something.
So you're saying that, but I mean the participation in sea shanty creation, I would say, does involve you in some amount of scene. So is there one of these that it misses? You're saying that it doesn't represent a scene because of which failing?
Well, okay, I guess it depends on like, is there any kind of chronological continuity that we expect here? Like Silicon Valley or Bell Labs, it's not only smart people doing stuff and experimenting, but they stay in the same scene over time, and that's why you can build on innovation and new ideas that have come up. It's not like sea shanty and then like everyone disperses. It's like Silicon Valley is the place to be. We're going to be there. We know that we'll find like awesome people at dinner parties and whatever, and like build on each other's ideas.
Right. So I guess
online,
the peer-to-peer hub nature of it is maybe missing. Like each person ends up building their own audience, but that doesn't necessarily, it may have future contribution to the scene, but it doesn't necessarily create a network effect of success for the scene. It creates more of a network effect of success per individual who could choose future collaboration, but they could also choose to do other new independent work detached from the scene.
Yeah, I think so.
So maybe that's what, it's a good distinction. So maybe the network effects of success accrue to the creator and not to the scene, whereas, when the Beatles show up in Hamburg, it makes Hamburg better. And they also end up building their own brand and going off and being famous otherwise. But the network of success definitely accrues to Hamburg in that case. And I think to cause the network of success to accrue to TikTok is probably too broad to be useful. And I think the network effects of particular audiences of successful sea shanty TikTokers is probably too, like it probably doesn't accrue enough value to the scene, which is sea shanties. So maybe that's, I think I might agree that there's weakness in sea shanty TikTok from being a scene, from kind of the networks of success, network effects of success accrue to like non-scene layers primarily. Hashtags are a flavor, right? Like, I bet if you go, there's a network effect too. If you go to sea shanty hashtag on TikTok today, I think you'd find tons of people posting. So it has some.
Oh, actually, so in his actual piece, he does talk about TikTok, but he talks about the hype houses, not just like a particular meme within TikTok, but like the hype house is the scene. So this is like the collection of people in place that then sparks further ideas and innovation.
In Pecky's piece, right? Okay. Wow. Patrons of The Eagle and Child wrote 3 of the 5 best-selling fantasy series of all time within an 18-year period. The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, and The Chronicles of Narnia.
That's the crazy thing, right? Like, so can you recreate that within, like, on the internet? Not necessarily like on the internet, but it could be like on an app or something. He's saying not fully. I wonder why not.
Yeah, I'm skeptical of the, if not fully. I want to understand why he thinks it might not work.
He's saying even as companies move remote, the internet cannot fully replace the importance of in-person interaction. The most influential modern senia will be those that mix online and offline.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree that there's probably having some mixing is probably stronger than having purely online, at least at this stage of evolution. Like, I think we see this a lot. Like, as much as the internet should obviate the network effects of San Francisco, there's some weakening, but not totally obviated, I'd say. Not yet, but probably will mostly be obviated over a decade period. he formed a meta-senius of people. I mean, he's doing this online, right?
Who?
Packy?
Yeah. Oh my god.
What is it?
Just was scrolling Twitter again, and someone started a clubhouse room in labor called
Oh,
"I'm in
jeez.
labor and having a baby." Clubhouse baby.
That's awesome.
Oh my god! And they named the baby Elon. No.
No, are you serious? Oh my god.
Okay, moving on.
I'm still reading Packy's. I'm falling behind here.
No, it's okay. Keep going.
I like this idea. Put differently, might Animal Crossing play host to communal genius just as the eagle and child did nearly 100 years ago? See that?
What was that?
This quote from this is from Packy's article.
Oh, okay.
So put differently.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were just on Pluto, kind of.
Yeah.
I wonder, thinking about something
That's sort of why I'm cautious of people who say that it can't be done online. I think we're just like really early for what it would look like online. Like the offline stuff is still, strong enough that if it's mixed in, it like really makes the whole thing better.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned like Pluto. So we hosted the office warming party online Pluto yesterday, and we kind of like, bump into a bunch of people and, catch up with people we maybe hadn't seen or have looser connections to, but that, it's fun to sort of bump into and catch up with.
Yeah.
So I think there's something interesting there about being able to, have a place. Because I think that's the thing is that's a place, whereas online, we don't have many places. Most of online is like voices. It's like a website. It's my website, or it's your website, or it's, my Twitter account or your Twitter account, but it's not a shared place.
Yeah.
And I think the senior stuff,
kind of the spatial dynamics that ensure predictability of like who you'll see somewhere, and then also spontaneity of being able to mingle and bump into people. Not necessarily present on any major website right now, but kind of these new experiments could plausibly serve that.
I guess like maybe Reddit, maybe like a subreddit would have some. Maybe it's the one of the older, longest running examples of
Yeah.
like place
Someone mentioned
online.
that in one of these tweets. Maybe it was the other guy who wrote the post, but yeah. It kind of reminds me of your comment of like every social app eventually turning into DMs.
Right.
Like spaces or subreddits are kind of like DMs with not like private, but predictable group of people in a predictable place.
Right. Yeah, I bet these things happen. Actually, Slack is another place, right?
Is a place?
It is a place, right? Like a given, not, I mean, the tool
Like a
itself is
given
not a
Slack
place,
group. Yeah,
but
yeah,
any
yeah.
given Slack could be like the Eagle and Child coffee house, right? It's like a place where people come and, you know, quickly return to frequently and are always, you know, kind of re-engaging with the same sets of people with common context. And there's, you know, I think a healthy amount of like, you know, raise, you know, kind of one-upsmanship to kind of compete to create more and better stuff. Um, yeah, so I think actually I would bet there are Slacks that are themselves pretty effective at this. You know, the kind of where the eagle and child like, you know, behavior exists, you know, entirely online or, you know, largely online, let's say.
Yeah.
La Moulin Rouge.
Hmm?
La Moulin Rouge.
In his
I
post.
was, yeah, he mentions in Paris, Les Années Folles. I don't know how
Mhm.
to, I don't speak French, but Les Années
Yeah,
Folles, I don't know, saw cultural, artistic, and literary icons from Ernest Hemingway to Monet mix and mingle in cabarets, including La Bouif sur le Toit and Le Moulin Rouge. I remember being struck by how, like, you know, these places that are sort of famous or fabled as institutions for creativity, you come to, you know, centuries later, and they feel somewhat like tourist traps.
yeah.
And you know, the storied history has kind of been papered over, you know, in a way. I don't know if there's like a name for that, but it
Yeah.
feels. I think Paul Graham wrote something about this related to uh, the Renaissance, I think, and maybe like Florence during the Renaissance. I'll see
Yeah.
if I can. Yeah, Cities and Ambition. That was it. May
It's
2008.
actually really, I wonder why this isn't taught more often, because whenever I find out about any of these, I'm kind of like stunned that like all of these thinkers that I've read individually, turns out like a lot of them were friends and went to the same bar. Like that's not a
Mm-hmm.
coincidence. That's part of, I think this is part of Packy's point too. Like that's how and why they were able to come up with their amazing ideas. Like there was a lot more correspondence and intermingling even then
Yeah.
than we ever really are taught in these kind of stories about Newton and Darwin, and
Right.
science was never like an isolated process, or music or art.
Right. Yeah, I think the more that you have, you know, the best practitioners, you know, craftspeople, people pushing the frontier, it becomes a hub where other people want to be, and then that, to sort of like see the process as well as, try their own hand at it and see if they can sort of elevate the art. And I think cities have been, this place in the past. So I think that's why we have in the Paul Graham essay, he talks about what cities want from you.
Yeah.
Power matters in New York, but New York is pretty impressed by $1 billion, even if you merely inherited it. In Silicon Valley, no one would care except a few real estate agents. What matters in Silicon Valley is how much effect you have on the world.
I wonder, this is like Jonathan's 3 archetypes of the entrepreneur mapped onto cities.
Cities, right? Yeah, it is. I think he does talk about it.
It sounds like San Francisco is for the politicians and New York is for the business people, and then I don't know where the craftsmen go.
Maybe LA. Yeah.
For technical craftspeople, yeah, maybe Cambridge. I mean, like with all the biotech and stuff, and like
Cambridge with good weather. It turns out it's not Cambridge. The people you find in Cambridge are not there by accident. You have to make sacrifices to live there. It's expensive and somewhat grubby, and the weather's often bad. So the kind of people you'll find in Cambridge are the kind of people who want to live where the smartest people are, even if that means living in an expensive, grubby place with bad weather.
I feel like I heard that at like a Yale, like some sort of like Yale admission weekend where they were like, the weather here sucks a lot, so like only the truly
right
top tier people who
you have to really want it.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not that convinced.
Can't just be a tourist. You have to really want it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you feel from the Packy piece? Do you feel like you're more convinced that it's we're not ready for it yet, or we're not really on the cusp of kind of a fully online scene emerging?
I think it will emerge, but I don't think it is right now, because I don't think that there are places that are like spatially predictable, limited enough in number, and also allow for serendipity. Like even if Pluto started becoming this like massive universe where anyone could join, then that defeats the point, because like only 50 people can fit in one of these, could have fit in one of these like pubs at a time, say, when Benjamin Franklin was around, and there were only like a small subset of people in his intellectual circle or in his town. I wonder if some of it goes back to what we were saying a couple lunch breaks ago, like everyone has a limited capacity in terms of like how many deep relationships they can have with others, even if that's thought partners. So I wonder if does some of the seniors depend on the core members of that group having like super deep relationships with other contributors, versus online you could sort of like collaborate with someone for one blog post and then you find someone else who's relevant for another, but it's not like you have these consistent 5 people like the Darwin Newton like blah 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 collective that kind of grow with you as you grow. I don't know. It's
like the kind of that collective to me sounds like the kind of stuff that I don't know, like Nathan is doing with Every.
Yeah.
There's one quote I just pulled out of the Pecky piece about the interintellect. So it mentions it's an ideal case study in modern place-based ritual. Would not exist without the internet. By volume, the vast majority of conversations among its members take place online. Despite this, the interintellect's in-person events are what strengthen the online relationships and make them real, and they harken back to earlier eras in Senia. Today, the interintellect combines online interaction and offline ritual to build a broad, active community while forming the types of bonds and collaborations that can only be developed in real life. So despite interacting fully online for the time being, Gott has said that the interintellect will return to in-person events as soon as it's safe. So it's kind of like one of the ideal case study in modern place-based. It's fully online right now, but is looking forward to a return to in-person.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think in-person will continue to matter, but it just comes with a different set of trade-offs.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
it wouldn't surprise me if
play into all of that.
how the what?
Like once we have like good enough VR.
Right. Did you see the we missed the goat and sheep tweeting thing?
I saw that, and then I also scrolled past this. Did you see this?
No, what's this?
This is our cute animal break on lunch break, but
Okay.
I thought I would get posted too. The cutest thing I've ever seen.
A tiny horse. It looks like the size of a dog.
I know.
That's awesome.
This would definitely be a really good contender for Only Pets.
Yeah. Yeah. I bet you could get a lot of sponsors for that.
Yeah.
That tiny horse. Pet break. It's like a segment of. Actually, it reminds me of an account that I follow. But I recently discovered. Let me see if I can find it. It's called something like places. Yeah, places where cat shouldn't be. Okay, this account. Are you a cat person? Do you like cats?
I love all animals.
Okay. This place where cat shouldn't be is pretty funny. It's this account. It's all these super random weird places where people
Oh my God. Oh. These are so cute. Oh my God, the one where the cat is just on top of the dog.
I know, this one I just shared.
Friends.
It's one of my favorites.
I always wish that we could be as naturally kind of like charitable towards new people we met as we are to just like cute animals on the street. Like imagine if you met just like a new neighbor and you were as excited as if there was like a really fluffy dog.
Right. Right. We should all try to live more like animals.
Yeah.
That actually reminds me, it's probably not the best thing, but it reminds me of another account that I like a lot, which is, it's very different, but this guy, I'm not sure where I originally found this, but this guy somehow just curates and shares all kinds of interesting, here's the account, I guess it's Rainmaker 1973, and the name is Massimo, and there's like, it reminds me of there's like the sloth claws work the opposite way that human hand does. So they show, it's kind of a bunch of little, almost like science tidbits and interesting videos. Like here's an example of one that I think is cool. But I like follow this account, and I feel like, it makes my Twitter feed just a lot better. Always like feels like a learning thing when he's gonna share something.
Oh, that's
and like
cool.
kind of like a surprise, surprise learning thing. Like you're like extra. It's like a delightful learning.
Yeah. Wow. Does
Do
this
you have
guy,
any?
is he like, oh, okay, he's a news columnist.
Oh, is this what Massimo does?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm not familiar at all with kind of his background or what.
Ooh, it seems like he's a science writer and an engineer.
Huh. Column Astronomia. Oh, it looks like an Italian publication.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, did you see this like visual explanation of potential and kinetic energy?
Where is that?
This is a guy climbing stairs and falling off stairs and showing the heights he can get to next. Here's the link I just shared right now in highlighter.
Whoa. That's so cool.
Have you seen these little rugs people put down that are kind of like optical illusions? If you look at it from the right perspective, it looks like
Wow. That's a conversation starter.
Yeah. How would you describe how you curate? Do you have any processes for curating on Twitter, like curating new accounts, things that you want to, are you sort of in the mood to find something intellectual or philosophical or science-based, or how do you sort of think about when's it time to find people to follow?
Like, how do I decide whether to follow someone or kind of managing the overall feed?
Meaning, I guess if a typical session maybe open Twitter and see what's new, do you actually proactively go on hunts for new people to follow from time to time, or does it just like things come at you and then you kind of just, you discover people through kind of maybe retweets or sort of haphazard, likes?
Yeah. It's been mostly haphazard, but I do sometimes, especially since I think on Twitter, I like to follow more like writers / people talking about process and things they're doing. So if I find a particularly interesting account, I'll sometimes look at like who they are following and piece apart some people from there to follow. But it does feel like a little bit of a mess right now. So I started trying to make like a couple different lists. I haven't started really using them yet, but I think it would help like lessen the aimless scrolling, and then you could go. I think using lists in the right way might actually help people tweet more productively, because it's like your engagement with the platform to like just scrolling ratio seems like you could do a better job if you're like, okay, here's my list of really good tech writers, and here's my list of like just like artists that I admire overall or whatever I'm in the mood for, and then I make the goal that like, okay, I'm going to engage with or like share one interesting idea about something to this group of people.
And then are you like browsing then via that list, and you find an interesting entry point to participate in a conversation? Is that what you mean when you say
Yeah.
like with a group?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like I've gone back and forth with how much I end up like proactively tweeting and tagging people with questions that I have. But I was thinking that that's like the most fun thing to do on Twitter. But it
Mm-hmm.
sometimes like you don't want it to be like spammy or like do too
Right.
much. You need to like use a lot of discernment about when and where and like what topics and stuff.
Right.
So maybe like better curation or organization of like ideas on Twitter would help with that. Some of that.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think about all that?
Yeah, I have not I would say I've like I guess always taken a fairly haphazard approach, like meaning a kind of non-calculated approach to Twitter, where I kind of I do some stuff and see what I feel like and see how it feels and what kinds of, conversations they instigate.
Yeah.
But I almost wish or want there to be like a place I can go to find all the best accounts for a certain topic. And so, every once in a while somebody will be like, oh, here's a dozen people that, I think you should follow. And if it's somebody whose taste I like, I'll just end up like following them, not even investigating the accounts and just see what shows up. So it's, I'd say, fairly kind of haphazard in that sense. Like I don't have like a really great proactive way to go find all the best stuff. But I do think like if there's one thing that would have helped me get more value out of Twitter earlier, it would have been to know about like that it's okay to participate in as many conversations and reply liberally when you have ideas that you want to discuss with somebody. And I think you have good instincts around this, but I think I started my sort of Twitter life more okay, I'll try a tweet, see if anybody engages with that. I was more like on the first node creation rather than participation in other kind of existing things. And I think it's I think it's hard to know what's acceptable and what's non-spammy. But I think if you're genuinely just like bringing your ideas and chatting with people as if you bumped into them at a dinner party, I think it actually works pretty well. Yeah. But I think many people, it's hard to, I think, get accustomed to the fact that that's okay and that's expected and that's sort of that's the expected behavior on Twitter versus some sort of it's not like intrusive to somebody else's conversation. It's kind of meant to be in public and everybody's okay with that.
Yeah.
I guess I think things like Slack communities make more like call it semi-public conversations more like it's more obvious that if you're in a Slack, you can chime in with whatever your thoughts are, and that doesn't feel like it's being intrusive because you were sort of welcomed into the Slack by somebody and there's some culture setter there. Whereas on Twitter, it's just out on the internet, so you don't always know. Figuring out the culture of Twitter and what you're comfortable with and what you think other people are comfortable with is, I think it's a hard thing for a new person to figure out. I think it's probably always something that can be continually explored and figured out.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to have to wrap Lunchbreak a little on the early side today.
Cool.
We've got
Sounds good.
some errands. Anything else that you wanted to cover today?
No, I think we got some interesting things in.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Thanks for this, and we'll see you on Monday.
Sounds good. See ya.
Okay.